Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is a members' business debate on motion number 8202 in the name of Elaine-Murray on all aboard the food train. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would be grateful if those members who wish to speak in the debate could press the request to speak buttons now. I call on Elaine-Murray to open the debate. 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. So, first of all, let me correct a typo which seems to have made its way into the motion, because the sum of money awarded to Food Train by the big lottery funds investing in communities supporting 21st Century Life grant was actually £590,474 over 5 years, not £59,474 as shown in the Business Bulletin. So actually it's about 10 times as much to celebrate this afternoon. I had hoped to be able to welcome Scott McGill, the Befriending Project Manager, the Chair, Dr Rob Wells, and volunteer Sue Gregg to the gallery, but I suspect that they have been prevented from coming by the severe weather this morning. But nevertheless, I am delighted to have been able to bring this debate to Parliament, which celebrates the continued success of a social enterprise which began its existence in Dumfries and Galloway in 1995, but now provides services to older people in 6 local authority areas in Scotland and has ambitions to expand further. Food Train started out 18 years ago after the Dumfries Elderly Forum conducted a survey of older people in the town, asking what services would really make a difference to their lives. Many respondents stated that they struggled with their weekly grocery shopping, and so Food Train was born, chaired by the redoubtable Miss Jean Mundell, who left no stone unturned or elected representative at any level unlobbied in her determination to get her beloved project firmly established. Her efforts at first focused on Dumfries and Galloway Council, but with the advent of the Scottish Parliament, she soon had firstly Susan Deakin and then Malcolm Chisholm in her sights as holders of the Office of Minister for Health and Communities. This paid off in 2002 with a 4-year grant from the Scottish Executive Better Neighbourhood Fund, which enabled staff to be recruited to develop the service. Ever since, Food Train has been well supported by successive Scottish administrations. Indeed, support from the current Scottish Government has enabled the service to be rolled out to other parts of Scotland. Jean herself was awarded the MBE for her services to the community in 2006, receiving the award from the Lord Lieutenant in her hospice bed the day before she died at the age of 80. She is in the company of Kirkpatrick Macmillan, inventor of the bicycle, and J.M. Barry, inventor of Peter Pan, as one of 3 people to be selected by community vote to be commemorated by a portrait bench in Dumfries. And if anybody wants to see that, it's on the Heath Hall to Cargan Bridge section of the cycleway, not far from my house, so I'm quite often able to go and see her as I walk my dogs. When I told Food Train's Chief Executive Michelle McCrindle that we were holding this debate today, her response was that if Jean had still been alive, she would have been chuffed to bits to hear Food Train debated in Parliament. I think she would have been even more chuffed at the success of Food Train today, in the receipt of a plethora of awards, including the Queen's Jubilee Award for Voluntary Service, and now operating in West Lothian, Stirling, Dundee, Renfrewshire and Glasgow, as well as in Dumfries and Galloway. Each month, over 500 volunteers give over 75,000 hours of their time to support 1,250 older people with 3,000 grocery deliveries, supported by 20 grocery store partners. But Food Train doesn't only deliver groceries. Food Train Extra household support also assists people in Dumfries and Galloway and now in West Lothian with household tasks which they find difficult, be it changing light bulbs, defrosting the fridge or freezer, or other small household tasks which decreased mobility or joint problems can make difficult. In Dumfries and Galloway, Food Train Friends offers a befriending service to combat loneliness with phone calls, home trips, trips out, events and clubs. Currently, 100 people receive this service, with volunteers giving 250 hours of their time each month. Esther Ransom may have launched Silverline the other week with some fanfare, but Food Train were well ahead of her. It is this service that the recent Big Lottery Fund Award will support and expand throughout our region to start with. Now, it would be very easy to talk for 7 minutes about how wonderful Food Train is and how wonderful all their volunteers are, but I think it's important to reflect on why their services are so necessary, and Food Train have asked me to speak about some of their concerns. The UK Centre for Longevity report earlier this year estimated that more than 10% of older people are malnourished, and this would equate to around 90,000 older people in Scotland. We aspire to our population leading healthier lives for longer, but unless older people are eating properly, that cannot be possible for them. The third sector is particularly well placed to provide services such as those provided by Food Train. Co-production of services, I know, is a fashionable concept nowadays, but Food Train was doing that way back in 1995. Loneliness is also, sadly, a major factor in reducing the quality of life of many older people, as partners and friends die and families live too far away for regular visits. Reducing mobility creates difficulties in getting out of the house, and having to give up driving will isolate people, particularly in rural communities, where there may be little or no accessible public transport. Projects such as Food Train Friends can make a real contribution, bringing friendship and fun back into people's lives. The improvement in quality of life is, of course, the most important factor. But when we are thinking about preventative spend, investment in these types of services can save the statutory public sector a lot of money by sustaining independent living and physical and mental health. Food Train are proud of the services they provide, but they remain concerned that the grocery service is still only available in 6 local authority areas, their household service in 2, and their befriending service still only in Dumfries and Galloway. As Michelle McCrindle said in her email to me, the frailties of ageing don't discriminate, whether you live in Portpatrick or Portree. Food Train continue to advocate for a single standard of social care for older people, and they also provide a wonderful example of how the third sector can provide the services that make all the difference. It's only about a year ago, I believe, that my colleague here, Claudia Beamish, hosted a reception in Parliament for Food Train, which was attended by many MSPs, more than are here today, I think. And we were all very impressed to learn not only about what they had achieved in Dumfries and Galloway, which those of us who represent the area were aware of, but their ambitions to do that for the whole of Scotland. And I look forward to continuing success. Well done to Food Train in getting this award. But I look forward to them receiving further awards and being able to expand their services right throughout Scotland to provide those sorts of support and services to our older communities.
Many thanks. We turn to the open debate, and I call Bruce Crawford to be followed by Claire Baker.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I want to very much thank Elaine-Murray for bringing this particular motion to Parliament. I think it's very apposite, particularly at this time of year, that we've got the chance to discuss something like the Food Train. And obviously, as Elaine described, it was launched in Dumfries in 1985, but it's been a vital service to many people across the country since that launch. And I want to congratulate Dumfries and Galloway Food Train on receiving that fantastic investment of over £500,000. It was well deserved, because I think they've proven themselves on the ground from their own customer satisfaction surveys that they've had in terms of the feedback they've had from the people they are helping. Elaine also mentioned that the Food Train is also in the Stirling constituency area, which I think the residents of Stirling are very lucky to have a branch of the Food Train in their area. It was launched 2 years ago under the leadership, and I'll use another one of Elaine's words, the redoubtable Fran Thou. Fran works with volunteers from across the Stirling area to provide a shopping service for people over 65 years of age, who cannot manage, as you might imagine, to do their own shopping. But it's when you see the scale of that grocery service and the deliveries that it does exist already in the 6 areas Elaine mentioned. I know they want to expand into other areas, but to have delivered already 27,000 grocery deliveries over these areas says something about the scale of operation that these volunteers are taking on. And that's why managing to get a hold of that £500,000 award is so important. Within the Stirling area, there are also currently around 150 customers who use this fabulous service, and with 55 local volunteers providing assistance. And over the past 2 years, the volunteers across the constituency have donated over 1,200 hours of their own time to help those in need of support. But not only do the volunteers offer an extremely valuable service providing groceries and home deliveries, they also have come to the aid of several people who've been in distress and who my constituency officer are aware are, helping them gain access to support services they need in a wider sense. But I'm also aware that locally the relationships that the Food Train has managed to build with many other third sector organisations in Stirling, working together very effectively in partnership. The Royal Voluntary Service, Start-up Stirling, who are also involved with one of the food banks in the Stirling area, and the Stirling Carer Centre. They also support work experience projects for Job Centre, for Scope, for young youth services, for organisations like the Richmond Fellowship, creating opportunities for people to become involved in meaningful activities helping those in their community. And in their annual customer survey, 98% of the users of the service voted the food train excellent or good. I just wonder how many public services would get that sort of level of recognition from the effort they're putting into helping people. I'm not in any way decrying the public service and what they do, but there's obviously something exemplary going on here, is the point I'm trying to make. And 60% of people saying they felt more than able to stay in their own home because of the service on offer. And that comes back to the point Elaine made quite rightly about early intervention and how important this can be in making sure that people are able to stay in their own home with their own family support networks around them. So food trains had a huge impact on the life of some of my constituents over the past 2 years. It's allowed them to live independently in their own homes, in the safe knowledge they'll have their shopping delivered to them every week. But just don't take my word for it. The service users have made some of the following glowing comments about the food train in my area. All the shoppers are cheery and helpful. They make my day, can chat and laugh. Being a type 1 diabetic, I find their service quite invaluable. I now feel confident that I can access foods for my diet. It makes our lives less stressful. An excellent service, fulfilling a great need, especially in rural areas. Food train makes it possible for me to live independently with the help of my friends for shopping. I would find life difficult without food train. And the one I like the best, they are magic. I think it says everything about the sort of organisation we're talking about. So to the staff and volunteers in the food train in Stirling and across the whole of Scotland and where they're involved, you've been doing a wonderful job. Keep it up. We value the service you provide. Certainly the people who get your service very much value what they do. And I've just got a moment to mention very quickly the issue of Silverline. I was actually quite moved when I watched that launch last week by Silverline by Esther Ranson. And it made me realise I was thinking about this debate, just how important this service is about that issue of isolationism and loneliness for older people. I guess I'm getting a bit closer to that myself now, so I'm getting a bit selfish and making sure everything's in place before I manage to reach that. But well done to everybody involved in this. It's a fantastic organisation, and well done for Elaine for bringing the debate to the Chamber.
Many thanks. Before we move on, could I just remind members that it's important to use full names, not only in terms of Chamber protocol, but also it's necessary for the official report, and it also helps the public who are watching our proceedings. So I'd be grateful if members could bear that in mind. I call Claire Baker to be followed by Alex Ferguson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to start by thanking Elaine-Murray for securing today's debate. I first met food train volunteers and staff in the Scottish Parliament at a lunchtime event. And when I spoke to the volunteers from Stirling, which is in my region, as well as the older people who used the service, they were also positive about their experience and said how much they valued it. It is remarkable that such a simple service, one that arose from the need for older people with reduced mobility to get food shopping done regularly and freshly, can deliver so many multiple benefits. The health benefits of staying at home for as long as possible and retaining a degree of independence are clear. I was interested to read that all service users are company members with a vested interest and democratic say in the shaping of the charity and its objectives. And the level of involvement in the charity gives people who use the service more of an investment in it and in its future. The regular interaction and friendship which is given by volunteers is invaluable. We all know about the 15-minute care visit. Statutory services are under such pressure. Third sector organisations, like the food train, can help relieve some of that pressure, as well as provide a preventative service offering care and support. There was a recent report of older people and loneliness. Age UK say that half of all people aged over 75 and over live alone, and that 1 in 10 of people aged 65 or over say that they always or often feel lonely. That is over 1 million people. We are familiar with some of the reasons for this. Families live further away from each other, and people experience bereavement, or neighbours are around less. But this is often a way to criticise modern society, and I don't think that's good enough. Not all communities or families are the same, and loneliness touches many people. I don't think societal change is enough of an explanation, and anyway, it's about how we respond to these circumstances that is important. And yes, society has and will always continue to change, but with new models of care and an understanding of the huge variation that there is in older people's needs, we can improve expectations and opportunities. We must also be alert to malnutrition among older people. Having previously fed a family, perhaps cooking for 1 or 2 people can often feel like more bother than it's worth. As Elaine-Murray said, recent research from the International Longevity Centre UK found around 10% of people over the age of 65 suffer from malnutrition and dehydration, which equates to around 8,000 to 9,000 older people in Scotland. The research found that malnourished people saw their GP twice as often, had 3 times the number of hospital admissions, and they also stayed in hospital for 3 days longer than those who were well nourished. Older people who have a relationship with an organisation such as Food Train, which values food and its importance, can help to address this issue. With 6 food trains across Scotland, their growth is a testament to the effectiveness and quality of the service. Of course, being a voluntary sector provision, securing funding is always vital, and the motion highlights the support of over £500,000 by the Big Lottery Fund for Food Train in Dumfries and Galloway. Securing this kind of support is such a valuable part of their work, and it's important to enable them to keep the service affordable. Stirling Food Train, which started in November 2011, have an ongoing programme of fundraising from bagpacking, car boot sales, textile recycling, and their Sponsor a Box scheme. This scheme encourages individuals or businesses to sponsor a food train box for £10 a year, and I congratulate all those who contribute to this scheme. Key to the success of Food Train is the volunteers, and Bruce Crawford talked about the volunteers in Stirling who do the shopping and deliveries in a way which is friendly and caring. And that's why I was particularly pleased to see Stirling Food Train presented with the Volunteer Friendly Award, the first volunteer organisation in Stirling to be presented with that award. So, Presiding Officer, Food Train is a great organisation. I'm very happy to recognise their contribution today, and I hope to see them continue to grow into the future.
Many thanks. And I now call Alex Ferguson to be followed by Elaine-McLeod.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And like others, can I begin by congratulating Elaine-Murray warmly for bringing this motion to the Chamber. I would also thank her for pointing out the typo in the motion, but I hope I'll be forgiven for taking this opportunity of perhaps being able to ask those who award these grants, frankly, what was wrong with £590,475, or actually for £590,500. I've never understood why £474 should be appropriate. So maybe that might feed through somewhere. But it's a significant amount of money, and it has been given to a very worthy organisation. And I really commend Elaine-Murray on her speech, and particularly for explaining just why in this day and age you still need Food Train, why it's so necessary. And there's a bit of an irony in the fact that, despite the huge improvements in IT communication that we've all now learned to love, still people are very lonely and isolated in this world that we live in. Food Train, as has already been explained, it began in Dumfries in 1995, and it's gradually spread across the region, where there are 6 different branches of it, 3 in Elaine-Murray's constituency and 3 in mine, as indeed it has across the country, where, as we've heard, it now operates in 6 different local authority areas. I've always tried, ever since I became an MSP, I've tried to use Volunteers Week as an opportunity to join the Food Train operation, to experience it for myself. But for some reason, I was never accepted. So this summer, I took matters into my own hand and rang them up and said, can I come and join you? And they were very willing to offer me a day out with them. And I found it absolutely fascinating. We started off, I went with the Newton Stewart Food Train, and we started off collecting the deliveries from the shop. We visited a couple of houses in Newton Stewart itself, and then we headed into the country. Now, Presiding Officer, I thought, and I still believe, I know my constituency quite well, but we headed up a road that I didn't even know existed, and by the state of it, nor does the local authority, I have to say, either. But when we got to the end of the road, we then headed up a track into the middle of a forest, opening 2 gates on the way, and in the end came to what I think one might refer to as a Button Ben, a little cottage in the middle of nowhere, a little glade in the middle of the forest, where lived one of the great characters of this life. And this lady didn't drive. She had no real way of communicating with the outside world. She was in her own little bit of paradise in the middle of this forest. And I don't know how she would have really survived on a weekly basis without the weekly visit from the food train. And one of the things that really came through to me was the very warm relationship that had obviously grown up between her, who was a very shy, retiring person, and the volunteers on the food train. It was a very warm, friendly relationship, and I suspect goes some way towards explaining the very high satisfaction ratings that Bruce Crawford referred to in his contribution. There is a clear, very friendly relationship between the service user and the service provider. And so just as the service has expanded across the region, so indeed has the suite of services that Food Train offers, as others have referred to, such as the recently launched Silver Line. As Elaine-Murray said, Elaine Ransom got the glory, but Food Train have been working on this for ages. And the one that specifically interests me and impresses me is the development of Food Train Friends. I noticed that Food Train Friends received the Service to Older People Awards from Age Scotland earlier this year, here in the Scottish Parliament, principally for the development of the befriending options that it now offers the service users. And I was quite moved by the news item relating to that award on the Dumfries and Galloway Food Train website, which states quite simply, our aim is to reduce loneliness and social isolation for older people across Dumfries and Galloway. How can you possibly aim higher than that, Presiding Officer? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now call Aileen MacLeod, after which I will be calling the Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I want to also begin by really thanking Elaine-Murray on securing this debate on a very valuable and vital voluntary service. And I welcome the opportunity to speak about a good idea from Dumfries and Galloway, which is spreading across Scotland. Now, one of my fairly early visits as a newly elected MSP was to spend a day volunteering with the Food Train's Stewartry branch in Dumfries and Galloway at the invitation of two good friends who are volunteers with the Food Train. And my day was organised by Jeff Hyde, who coordinates the Food Train's activities in the west of Dumfries and Galloway. And I have to say that, like my colleague Alec Ferguson, that it was a very enlightening and fascinating experience. And the proportion of retired people in the Stewartry is one of the highest for any locality in Scotland at 20%. And the Stewartry also has the largest population of older people in the region, with 10% over the age of 75. Now, this compares with a regional average of 8.5% and a Scottish average of 7.1%. So the number of lone pensioners in the Stewartry is 25% higher than the national average, and is also the most sparsely populated area of Dumfries and Galloway. Now, given that we know that people are living longer, which is a good thing, but not necessarily living well, there is clearly a substantial demand for Food Train services in the Stewartry, and in fact the Stewartry has slightly more customers than neighbouring Wigtonshire, with its significantly larger population. So the Food Train's Stewartry 63 volunteers are kept very hard at work, from orders being sent or phoned in on a Monday, to the teams of shoppers who descend on the local co-op to buy the items, and the drivers who make the deliveries every week, as well as the organisers who ensure that everything runs smoothly. A huge amount of time, effort and care is put into the service. And the Food Train has attracted both loyalty. I mean, my friends have been volunteering with the Food Train for 7 years, as well as the goodwill that they receive from other local businesses. I mean, for example, a local garage in Kirkcudbright has made available the use of a 4x4 in the past, so that deliveries can continue during the bad winter weather. Presiding Officer, it would be fair to say that the Food Train has become part of their social landscape. And I also want to reflect on why the Food Train is important in a wider context. You know, its services are vital because they also help us to deliver the NHS's 2020 vision of more people living for longer in their own homes. Making sure that people have enough good quality food to eat is absolutely fundamental to achieving that aim. But there are also the less measurable benefits of the service. The provision, as others have highlighted, of social interaction. You know, the fact that someone is checking unobtrusively, of course, that folk are all right, and taking action if something is wrong. And many of the Food Train's more rural members in the Stewartry live in communities which used to have a shop, a post office, even a bank, and in which most of these no longer exist. So these opportunities for social interaction are gone, and with them the opportunity for folk to look out for each other. So the news that Bib Glottery is to fund the rollout of the Food Train Friends befriending project across Dumfries and Galloway is particularly welcome, and I'm sure will be of great benefit. Presiding Officer, the Food Train is an extremely valuable service, which I've been delighted to experience firsthand. It is hugely beneficial to the members who receive its services and the volunteers who provide them. It's an excellent initiative, a fantastic organisation, and I'd like to join Elaine-Murray and my colleagues across the Chamber in wishing the food train the very best for the future, and to say thank you to all the volunteers who deliver such a vital and valuable service. Thank you.
Many thanks. Can I now invite Margaret Burgess to wind up the debate? Minister, you have around 7 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Presiding Officer. And like others, I would also congratulate Elaine-Murray in bringing this debate to the Chamber and highlighting the excellent work of Food Train in providing shopping, handy person and befriending services to older people in 6 local authority areas across the country. And I also thank her for clarifying the lottery grant, because my last words when I left the office, where I had the figure of almost 600,000, was I am not going to argue with the mover of the motion. So I'm glad we've got that one sorted out, and it's a well-deserved award. And the motion highlights the benefits of support services for older people, particularly for those that find it difficult in some cases to manage household tasks themselves, but sometimes just with a bit of small help they can continue to live independently at home. And the fact that Scotland's older population is growing is something to celebrate. It's proof that we're using advances in medicine and technology and are living longer, and we want healthier lives, to live longer and healthier lives. And the Government recognises that organisations like Food Train are vital in delivering good outcomes for older people. We recognise the contribution this makes to our wider work on housing and support for older people. Age, Home and Community, the Scottish Government's 10-year strategy for housing and support services for Scotland's older people, was published in partnership with COSLA in December 2011. And in that strategy, we were delighted to include the work of Food Train as a case study. And I was happy to hear of the recent award from the National Lottery's Investing in Communities Fund, which will allow services to expand. The Big Lottery invests £300 million in its Scottish Grants programme between 2010 and 2015, which is £1 million a week in Scotland's communities. And Food Train's award of almost £600,000 will help support older people in Dumfries and Galloway and support many vulnerable older people throughout the next 5 years. And it was interesting here that the contributions from Alex Ferguson and Elaine MacLeod, who've actually been a day out with the Food Train, and certainly that, I think that would give a great insight. Their experiences of that has certainly given me an insight into it as well. And we all know that the population forecast, the number of people aged over 75 will increase by 82% by 2035. And this does present us with a significant challenge. However, Scotland has a track record of delivering real benefits to older people, including free personal and nursing care, and we have retained these in the face of current spending pressures and plan to continue them. But it's vital that we have the right housing and support for older people. And getting this right will help enhance people's quality of life, help them to feel safe and secure, reduce the number of falls and accidents in the home and subsequent emergency hospital admissions, and also allows us to make better use of our resources. And all of this produces good outcomes for elderly people. Our national strategy for housing for older people is built around 4 themes clearly shown in the work of Food Train. Older people are an asset, and that's obviously vital to Food Train. Choice, planning ahead and prevention. And older people tell us that they want to remain at home for as long as possible. It's therefore right that, like anyone else, they should have this choice. Preventative services like those provided by Food Train help older people maintain their independence, retain control over their lives, stay active and contribute to their community. And a number of speakers have mentioned isolation, and certainly while older people want to stay at home, and we want to see that as well, the one thing none of us want to see is people isolated in their own home. And I think initiatives like Food Train prevent that action, and people actually get involved in it. The volunteers also, the work that they do in this initiative has also, as others have said, to be praised. So we need a range of different types of housing and support services that will meet the needs and expectations. And in 2011, we launched the Reshaping Care for Older People programme and the accompanying £300 million change fund, and that supported many services aimed at improving independence and well-being of older people. And the central theme running through this is prevention. Its importance is widely recognised, particularly in the context of public service reform. We can't pretend that we can always prevent falls or deterioration in health. However, services like those delivered by Food Train can reduce the likelihood of traumatic and costly hospital and care home admissions. And good progress has been made in recent years, but as I said earlier, we need to tackle isolation for people living independently at home. Projects like the Food Train and the new Living It Up project, an initiative that supports active lifestyles for Scotland's older people, have the ability to really change the lives of our elderly populations, which is our parents, grandparents, neighbours and friends. And as Bruce Crawford said, let's not forget, one day all of us, and some of us sooner than others, and I include myself in that. So to conclude, Presiding Officer, issues affecting older people have rightly gained national prominence in both housing and health and social care agendas, but we need to increase that momentum. So as we implement our strategies and deliver Scotland's vision for older people, joint working across the public, independent and third sectors will be vital to achieving success. Food Train is making a significant contribution to the delivery of these preventative services in a number of areas across the country. And I'm delighted to hear about the success of the project and the significant funding award from Big Lottery. And today I would like to wish Food Train well as they continue their work. Thank you.
Many thanks. That concludes Elaine-Murray's members' business debate on all aboard the Food Train, and it's time to move on to the next item of business. I'll allow a few moments for members to change places.